wake up in the morning and wipe the yesterday from my eyes. Before I shower, pick my clothes, and find the right tie. There's a boy inside I've tried to hide that wants to find his way. A boy whose tears have dried that just wants to be okay.
Hi everyone, welcome to a new episode of Carolyn Talks. This is the YouTube channel / podcast where I, your host, film culture critic and journalist Carolyn Hanks, speak to film creatives around the world about their work, the industry, and what inspires them. And today I'm very happy to be joined by writer, director, filmmaker, animator, Frank E. Abney III to talk about his latest short film, Black Man, which recently screened at the Michaud Film Festival in LA. I am so happy to be able to get to talk to Frank. We were reminiscing a bit before we began recording because this is, I think, officially my fourth official interview with Frank. I previously interviewed him. My last interview with him was in 2021 for his short film Canvas. And I've interviewed him a couple of times for his other work on films like Pixar's The Incredibles. And also for, I think we also spoke about for Hero Love as well, which is a film he worked on. But I'm very pleased to be talking about this particular film, Black Man, because it's your first black and white short film, and it centers around this black man, Elliott, voiced by Aldis Hodge, who is having these days and these moments of where he's contemplating his life as a black man in America, as a black man in the world we live in. You know, he's talking about being sad, being frustrated, and being angry, and like there's voiceover. But I think what also makes this film unique, not only is it black and white and the animation style, but it's voiceover. And your previous short films that you wrote and directed were all silent films, you know, no dialogue. So this is the first time there is dialogue, which I wasn't expecting, but I love because it's a poem. But it's a beautiful short film about just life as a black person in America. And it features a sequence at the beach, which I love. The beach is my happy place. I was very happy to see that. But first of all, thank you so much, Frank, for joining me, and congratulations. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. And I appreciate you for letting me jump on here.
No, for sure. I'm always excited to talk to you. I'm happy to talk to you because like to watch how your work is progressing over the years, like, you know, like your own work as a filmmaker is progressing, you know, and it's been such a joy for me to watch how you take chances and risks as an animator, you know. Like, I remember when I first interviewed you, it was I went back over my interviews. I think my first written interview was with you for Sci-Fi, and we were talking about how you were inspired by 2D animation films like The Lion King, you know, and also Tarzan. And watching this film, you get the elements of the 2D animation, you know, and it's kind of monochromatic. So it's been such a joy to watch your work evolve in that way.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, I try to keep like I feel like animation and sometimes just filmmaking in general, it can put you in a place of like, this is what this person does, this is their aesthetic, this is their, but like I like so many different things. Like I just want to, you know, try different things. So I mean, the black and white thing, it did kind of scare me at first, because I was like, I don't know if it'll take away from, you know, people are used to seeing, you know, they want you know, you can be moved by color and you know, use it as you know, something that supports the emotional journey that you're taking a viewer on. But you know, I was also really inspired by the idea of making something that had an underlying thing that, you know, it's not spoken, but for me, I was putting something into it where it's like I'm connecting a viewpoint of my own, where I feel like sometimes my own navigation can be seen as black and white. And so, you know, I wanted to put that as a way for people to see this and connect it, even if it was just for myself. Like, even if nobody knew why it was in black and white, it was like, for myself, I'm putting it that way. And you know, but I was also inspired by you know, black and white photography from like Gordon Parks, and also the way that people like Bradford Young handle light. with their cinematography and just kind of mashing all that stuff together and doing something that I felt was, special. I also want to mention Yvette Nicole Brown also. You mentioned Aldis. Yvette Nicole Brown also lent their voice, and it was interesting getting. I didn't know how it was going to work with like having narration over. I had never done something with that and how that would compete with music and all that, but I think we ended up with something that worked pretty well.
Oh, we're definitely going to talk about the voiceover by Yvette and Aldis, because I think that's something that just makes it truly unique and special. But where did the idea for making it black and white first come to you? Like, did you originally as soon as you say I want to make a film about like this, did it immediately come to you in black and white, or was it something that you had to just like slowly, like, you were like, what, maybe this might work now, but because the reason I asked it, because there's some filmmakers that they say that sometimes an idea for a film comes, like they may just see something like a random image, and the idea for a whole film comes from just this one seed, this one germination of an idea. And so for you, like when you had the seed and the germination for the idea of this film, was it always originally black and white, or was that a decision you slowly came to as you were coming up with a full concept?
Yeah, it was there in the very beginning, but I wasn't for sure if I was going to fully commit to it. So I still had all the textures and, all the stuff done in color, just in case. And then I did play with the idea of like, having part of it, kind of desaturated, and, I was kind of, and then I was like, what am I doing? I just had this, I was like, I'm gonna just fully commit and just, just stripped all of it out. And I was like, okay, even if I'm uncomfortable with it and not seeing those other things and what it may brings out, and, if it may flatten certain things, I was like, this is what I had in mind, and I'm sticking to it. And, I left it and forced it on myself.
No, and I love that it is in black and white, or even like, so we all say black and white, but then nothing is ever truly black and white. There's always shades of gray.
Right, yeah.
But I love that you committed to that, because I did imagine the film, like what could the film look like in color? And the reason I thought about it, because of Canvas. Canvas is a film that is about color. It's about art. It's about painting. It's about bringing color, bringing light to color on canvas. And I was thinking to myself, what would this film look like in color? But then it was like, no, I love that it is in black and white, because as you said, like you mentioned, like cinematographers like Bradford Young and film and photographers who work in black and white film, and like especially actual film photography. And there's just something so special about film photography in black and white that I think really does capture. It sounds tacky and trite to say, but the human soul in black and white that you just don't necessarily see in color photographs. Like when you look at the old school black and white Polaroids, there's just something that is, if you watch like old school black and white films, like not having all of the color to visually distract us really does make us focus on the characters. And even then, not just even when you look at the world around, like you can really appreciate sometimes black and white does bring up textures that kind of get lost in color. Like wood grain. Sometimes like a black and white picture really does bring up the texture of wood that you don't necessarily get to see in color. So your film made me think of that, like the ocean. Like I actually got this picture in black and white saved on my phone, because I took it in both black and white and in color, because I took this picture back home in Barbados, and I have pictures that I took of the beach back home, and I love how the beach sometimes look in black and white versus color, because there's just something that you get, and your film made me think of that.
Oh, that makes me happy. Yeah, because it is there is some, to your point about just the as much as you can think of color bringing out details, the same happens when you strip it away. And I'm glad you mentioned that.
And in talking about it stripping away, like how challenging was that for you in the animation process? Because again, the animation for this monochromatic in color, but I think it's also monochromatic in tone, because it kind of has almost this technical, I don't know how, is it the word I'm looking for, technical, or is it mechanical? It has almost this kind of like mechanical texture to the skin. It sounds weird. I've been trying to figure out how I would explain, but it kind of almost, it kind of has almost less mechanical texture to the skin, you know, like
Yeah.
it's hard to explain, but I love.
No, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, there is a process. There's a post processing thing that I did with the rendering, because I ended up doing the lighting and rendering myself, and so I was trying to figure out how to, like, I didn't want it to look like realistic, but I did want to have some kind of, like, graphic appeal to it that was, it didn't take you out of the organic feel of it, but it wasn't necessarily, like a realistic skin texture. So no, you definitely caught that. And that was intentional. I think overall it was finding a specific look that also complemented the black and white and the animation, because even with the animation I tried to keep it pretty um contained, just similar to what you were saying about how with some films with a large amount of color, or it could be just the level of vibrancy that you're seeing, or it you're taking in a lot of information. And so with animation, even just when I work on other films, depending on the situation, it's going to dictate how I handle the acting. So I'm not going to have a lot of big going on when I want you to be here. I want you to focus in on what's happening, but not just what's happening on screen, but what's happening internally. And so I don't want a whole lot of movement, like, everything. I want everything to be necessary. Like, if there's no reason for me to move, then I'm going to stay where I am, and you'll get everything in the eyes and brows and stuff. And yeah, just being very intentional with the amount of movement there is on screen and with the camera as well.
Yeah, there was something in particular. I was trying to remember what the animation style reminded me of, and it literally just came to my head. It's the animated short film Zima Blue. It was part of the Love, Death, and Robots Netflix animated series. They did 2 seasons of it, and Zima Blue was in the first one. And Zima Blue is like, it's so colorful, but the animation style kind of sticks in this bucket of mechanical. That's the way I'm looking at describing it. And it made sense for that, because it's about this robot that has an existential crisis. It's a robot that's made to work. And then it keeps working and working and working till the point it's just like, it starts to slowly fall apart because it's working so much. And it's an existential crisis. But I think the reason that film made me came to my head just now, not only because that, like, it gives me that same kind of feel, but like, I think like your character Elliott is kind of having this kind of same existential crisis where he's worrying. He feels like he's running, he's like a hamster on a wheel, he's just like, he's going and going. He's like, I'm living the same life over. I wake up, do this thing during the day, go back to sleep, wake up, go through the same process every single day. And he's like, yeah, but there's so many emotions that is coming along with this routine. He's like, so much is expected of him as a black man, like he's so much he's expecting of himself as a black man, so much society is expecting of him as a black man. And that's society inside his home, because he's thinking constantly about what society thinks of him. There's society in where he works, which looks like an office building, and then there's the culture of the black culture, like, am I doing enough to uphold and uplift the black culture? And then he's thinking so much about his younger self. Is he failing his younger self? Is he failing his parents? And I want you to talk a bit about that, about the cons. And I thought it was interesting that the film is about this is a black man having an existential crisis. And it made me think about how you as an animator feel about this, because as an animator, you're sitting down at the desk literally the drawing board every single day. Sometimes the process of animation is repetition, doing the same thing over and over and over to adjust like each moment till and so I wanted to talk to you about that, if that's what kind of inspired like Elliott's inner monologue, because his monologue, the monologue voiced by Aldis Hodge, is different to the monologue voiced by Yvette. Elliott's inner monologue is very much about him questioning himself and his purpose, whereas Yvette's monologue, her poem, is her reassuring and saying, you are enough. So I want to talk about Elliott first, and like how you kind of relate to that as an animator.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny you mentioned the connection with being an animator, because I wasn't thinking about that, but it's true. It's true. Like there is, because the what you're doing, like the context of the in the action is what keeps it fresh, but the action itself is, it's a similar process to, each time. Sometimes you learn new tools or new ways that you're learning different workflows from different people to add to your repertoire. But yeah, but I mean, what how I came to it was purely uh my own version of what happens in the film. It's my own navigation, everyday life kind of thing. The things you deal with on the street, on the at work and so on. Times I've been pulled over for nothing, but I'm sitting there like, it's like, can I just go to work, be on my, like, you got people actually doing stuff that you could be stopping right now. And then you're not knowing what could happen in this moment. So you get there's like a little trimmer to his hands while he has him on the dash waiting. Um, so it was mainly just my navigation and the ongoing thoughts that occur, like where it could be from childhood through adulthood, where it's like you got stuff going on around you. It's like, man, I don't feel like fighting today. Like I don't want to fight. Like I don't, or you think because you're a man, like you can't be afraid. You always, but especially after my dad passed, and that whole idea of being the new the man of the house kind of thing. It's
Yeah.
like when there's something in the house, where there's a certain kind of mess to handle, or a certain, there's all these kind of like quote unquote man jobs, if you're putting them into like gender roles and stuff. It's kind of like you can't be afraid. And then also to the outside world, with your friends and stuff, and or even those like macho people out there that's like that can't admit that they're afraid of things. It's just getting all those feelings out. It's like just unloading, and then but then having that reassurance that, yeah, that's normal. It's okay. But, it's like, but when you're navigating, you don't really think about that. And the other part, with his younger self being in the film, it was kind of this, in a way, I've had this wish of, man, I wish I could have known this coming up. Like, I wish I can reassure this kid, like, it's gonna be fine. Like you're gonna go through some things. It's gonna be some tough moments. You're gonna have some times where you don't know what you're doing. You don't know if this is the right thing, but you're gonna be good. Like you're fine. We did it. We're gonna make it through all this. And so I wanted to have that kind of recurring thing of them approaching each other and finally coming face to face, and he's able to share that with himself. And yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, you said something like the whole this is something that has always bugged me about humanity, because it's something that I say it happens in so many cultures where, again, there's a aspect of patriarchy being a burden on men and boys, where like either the father may not be present at all, or the father may have died or left home, and the pressure is put on the boy. It's a child. You say, you're the man of the house now. You gotta step up to the plate. And it's like, I've always wondered this. I'm like, why would you tell a child to replace a grown adult? Like, why are you telling a child, be a man, you're the man of the house now? No, they're not, because they can't pay bills. But that makes like,
no, I mean, it happens way too, like, I mean, that forces you to grow up quickly. But thankfully I had a good balance. Like I had, it was like, I'm really, I can't thank my mom enough for just allowing me to have my emotions and always encourage me to like it's okay for a man to cry. Like
Yeah.
she would always say like a real man cries. Like that's, like I'm glad I had that balance of like the world's expectations and the expectations when I'm at home,
Mhm.
and knowing that no matter what, this is my safe place to return to, and I'm gonna be good when I walk out that door. I mean, I always know it,
Yeah.
but I will be.
You will be, yeah, and right. So it's just like so the again the film references. There's what I love what you did with the dialogue is there's so many references to so many things that affect black men and black people in North American society. That there are things you show, like for instance, like Elliot being pulled over. There's going to work and there's a faceless white person like checking up on him when he is in the elevator, and it's like we see that, but then the dialogue um mentions these things without being explicit, because and I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that we as black people, we just inherently understand, we get it. There are things that are just cultural no matter where we're from. They're just things that are intrinsically a part of our who we are as black people, as this thing, particularly in North America and in a very patriarchal and a white supremacist world. It's like and I love that you didn't have to spell out everything in the dialogue, but it's just like, I mean, you listen to it, you get it, and it's just like, yeah, like, we get it. So I want to ask you about that now in particular. And like, again, this is your first short film where there is dialogue, and like and the dialogue is there's Elliott's inner monologue, and then there's Yvette's response to his inner monologue, and her response is like, it's like there's call and response is a form of is a form of singing. It's almost like a genre of singing where we call it call and response, which is like where gospel music originated out of the call and response, and like call and response came through the times of slavery, of enslavement, where black people would be in the fields doing their work. Then someone would say something, and then the rest of the workers would respond. And like the dialogue for the film kind of functions like that, like Elliott is doing the calling, and you have like Yvette's character doing the response, and she could be his mother, she could be his wife, she could be his sister, she could be an auntie, his grandmother. She doesn't have to be specifically identified, and that's what I love about it, like you were leaving it up to the audience's interpretation. So talk about just developing the script in that way and making it as like a call and response.
Yeah, I mean, she represented the kind of like the voice from above, whatever people's beliefs are, whether it's God, the universe, like that was how I was creating it. That was what her role was to him, because for me, I'm a believer, so I'm I think about, even sometimes, like, you don't know, as you're navigating, you don't know if what you're doing is the right move, or how I'm feeling. Like, you kind of want that reassurance sometimes, and sometimes you don't hear anything. But you're not, it's like you're listening for the wrong thing. And so this was my way to put a voice to it for you to hear, because this, even though it's a black man and it's representing my navigation, it's also representing, I felt like it was a universal feeling that, everyone can relate to, navigating the world, not being able to bring your whole self and how you feel to it. And so, I knew, hearing Yvette's voice, over the years, like I knew she and Aldis were the only people I thought of for these. And I wanted her to be this almost like, it's like a calm force. It's like you have this welcoming voice that feels like home, but there's a power to it as well. And just reassuring you, like, yeah, it's okay to feel those things. Like, it's okay. And then also, I kind of broke you mentioned the writing of it. So for the writing, I kind of broke it down into three pieces. So the beginning was the, stating these feelings and having the reassurance of it's okay. So that was kind of like the it's okay section. And then I wanted to focus on, okay, we have that, but now it's like what you deserve. So there's the you deserve moment. So you're dealing with the how people may perceive you and how that comes off, like, and we may not get sad about it or angry about it, but it's just like when he enters the elevator after this thing happens, it's like he's not sad about it. He doesn't need his approval or anything. It's more of a, like, the fact that this even happens is ridiculous. So, but having that voice, like, uh you deserve to be heard. You deserve, even after that, like saying about how you deserve love, like, there's a lot of ways we navigate, especially as as Black men, where you have to be strong, and you're a provider, you're this and that, but it doesn't really, we're not really told a whole lot about how uh we deserve love also. It's like you can give it and provide it. You are meant to be this person to facilitate it in some ways, or security or whatever that is, but it's like, no, you deserve it too. You deserve, that's why I have it in the film. You deserve to give it, share it, bathe in it, bask in it. You deserve the way love kisses your skin, like all those things. That's like, it's like filling, you deserve your cup to be filled as well. Not just outwardly.
Yeah, because I put down, like, when my notes was like, I put down that the main theme of the film is gentleness, comfort, safety, love, and acceptance, right? That these are the kind of like these are the goals and the aspirations and the wishes, for that Elliott has for himself, and that this ancestor, this voice, this person giving him reassurance is telling him that you want this, and you can get it, and you do deserve it, and you will have it. And the thing is like, there's so many people that they don't think they deserve these things, that they have, or that the only way to deserve them is to earn it through some action that is determined by somebody else, again, by society, by culture, by family, by friends, and it's just like, you don't have to earn to be loved, you don't have to earn acceptance in who you are as a person, and accepting the fact that I have a right to exist, I have a right to my anger. I have a right to my disappointment. I have a right to feeling disappointed, that things don't work out. You may get over them, or you work your way through it, which is like what Yvette's wife said. She's like, you'll work your way through it. You'll get through it, but you're okay to feel what you feel at this point in time. And what really struck me with that is, like, growing up in like the Black church, like there's always this thing where they say, I remember it's from the 90s, late 80s or 90s. There's this song by Ron Canoli that my mom used to love playing all the time. He said, if you're going through hell, don't stop. If you're going through hell, don't stop. Just keep going. You'll get through the other side, It's hell now, but if you're going through hell, don't stop. Persevere. But
I like that.
But the thing with that always something that always used to bug me is, like, it is also okay to just stop and say why. It is also okay. It is also okay to say, I am going through hell right now. Let me just like feel that, and then I can push through, because sometimes pushing through without taking a moment to stop and rest and rejuvenate that's a trial in and of itself. So like what she was saying kind of made me think of that. Like, it is okay to stop and say, this is a mess up. Excuse me, language. This is a mess up shit. Like, what's happening? It's okay to sit in that and just be like, what is happening? But then she's like, but you can get up and then keep pushing through. So I want to ask you about that. Like, as a creator, like, there will be moments of frustration, there'll be moments of where you'll be like, I can't get this one detail done exactly the way I want it to look. And for you, I wanted to ask you, like, how And this would be like, I guess, for any advice for anyone who like is a would-be animator or someone who is an animator and like they may be stuck. Like, how do you get through? Like, what is your process of like saying this is like I cannot deal with this. I need to like walk away, then I'll come back. Like, what is your process of pushing through hell? Of course, after taking a step and see what is going on.
I mean, I think it's usually that last part you mentioned about taking a step away and coming back. I think that's like I'll hammer on stuff as long as I can. Sometimes, I'm like, oh damn, it's like 3 a.m. and then I'm like, okay, let me stop. But I'll try to explore as many options as I can to figure this thing out. Like I can kind of obsess over it sometimes, like wanting to figure this thing out. And I think that's probably what's kept me in animation for almost 20 years. Like it's like there's no matter that you're doing the same process over and over, it's always different. And there's always going to be a different character that maybe, I mean, you got to get into their mind somewhat, but then there's their physicality, there's the constraints of the story, whatever. Like, it's always different. It's always a different challenge. And I think as artists, we're all problem solvers at the core. And so that, and so I'll just keep hammering until I try to figure it out. And then, if I'm reaching a point where I'm just like, okay, I've exhausted all options, then, I'll see where else I can focus so I can still progress, and make my way through, to the end goal. But I got to do it somewhere else. And then I'll let this thing go for a little bit until I return back to it. And a lot of times a thought will come up or something, in some way it'll bring itself to my attention of what I didn't try. And then, and if it wasn't that, someone who I didn't think to ask, that does this, or, I may scroll past a post and they did something, I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot to ask that person about, and so it'll come back up. But yeah, that's definitely the walk away and come back is the big one.
Mm, mm. And part of the creative process is like asking for help. You just said like you asked for help or something might inspire you. Talk to me about getting the help for this film. We will talk about the story and everything, but let's talk about working with Yvette and Aldis. Like Aldis, he voices Elliott, but he also, I guess, also produced the film as well, because Hodge Brothers Production is a company that he has with his brothers, Edwin, I believe.
Edwin. Yeah,
Edwin, right? And so we'll talk about getting all this to my mouth is getting twisted. Is it all this to do the voice of Elliott, but also like how did working with the company, production company work come about?
Yeah, I mean, especially well, I'll start from the top with just asking. So, I mean, we had already met and knew each other for a little bit prior, and so when I got to the point of okay, I don't know if I'm going to do this silent, like and have myself narrate it. Like I don't want to do that. Like I want to have both distinct voices and instantly when the moment I thought of having voices other than my own, just doing it, like them two first ones came to mind. Aldis, because he has this deep, powerful voice that also has range that he can get to those like kind of longing, almost like a longing sound, but then also have the commanding sound, like there's a lot of levels to it. And same like what I mentioned about Yvette earlier. And so it was, I brought it up and kind of talked about what I wanted to do with it and, just what it meant. And I think that was that alone was what got both of them on board. Like I remember Aldis mentioning like, this it being something that he was just talking about, like this idea and in terms of our own journey, our own like mental health and all that. And so so he was on board, and then also, he had the production company with Edwin, and so because for me that was like, I need some help. Like that was that was my mind. I was like, I don't know how I'm get certain resources, and how, just because, I was doing this independently, and even though the last one with Netflix was independent as well, I did a Kickstarter, and so we were
Yes,
able
you
to
did,
raise
right?
funds and stuff, and this time we didn't have that, so it was like, okay, how else can we try to get what we need? And so that's where Aldis and Hodge Brothers Productions came in, and that's where Nicholas May, one of the executive producers, and Archie Davis and 9B Collective, like, which is, also Aldis's company with Phil Boutte and Mikey Wandy.
Oh, okay.
It's the I don't know if it's the only, but it's the first and only that I know of black owned concept art company. Um, and so, yeah, that was huge. And so having their support, allowed us to do a lot of stuff to get the film done that otherwise would have been, I don't know how I would have been able to do it. And then also when it came to the production of it, the team is very small, so it was asking people to jump on board, and starting with, I always tend to start with people that I already knew. So um, whether it was artists that I met on Instagram, whose work I liked, or, friends that I knew for a while. So Joshua Leonard, he was one that, designed the young Elliott. And so, and it also, like, I'm working around their schedules because they're busy, they're doing, so I'm like, do you have time to design this one guy? Or like, or my guy, Mikhail Wellington, who's a dope modeler. I'm like, all right, I got this woman for this. I have a bit of a love scene, and you think you can help out with this, or or even with the main character, just like sprucing up the model for Elliott, and just um, and then other people I didn't know, but I reached out to get help with little funds we could scrape together. And then I ended up taking on a lot myself that I wasn't planning on doing. But, it was I think it allows you to, just as a creative, it allows you to be stronger for the next thing. So, you're learning things and expanding that tool belt. And now you can come to the next project with, more ways of doing it independently, because that was the goal with this. And part of my mindset at the time, it was, all right, I'm gonna try to see how I can do this and cut the studio stuff out of it, and you know, not just this project, but even like career wise, when it came to the film industry. And so, um, yeah, this gave me even dealing with like SAG stuff, like SAG, and getting it out there, like all these things that um I didn't have as much exposure to, because, a lot of times studios would take care of that stuff. And so, Aldis came in, I'm asking all these questions about, doing this and this and this. And then, just, yeah, it all came together in a way that just reinforces that idea that I try to push out there, like, just find a way to get it done. Find a way to make it happen. Ask, because, a lot of times you're working on stuff you don't want to, I don't know if people may think of it as a sign of weakness or something, like, or you want to be that boss kind of. It's like, yeah, but even if you think about a boss, they got people doing stuff for them, so they're getting help.
You can't do everything 100%,
So,
yourself. Like, people say, I'm
yeah.
a one-man show. I'm like, are you making all the, like, for instance, like a baker may be running his bakery himself, but I'm like, are you growing the wheat? No. Are you
Right.
are you milling the paper to for your packages? No.
Yeah.
Are you did you make your car yourself? No. Like,
Seriously, it's
like,
like,
like, we don't really truly do anything on our own. And I think for
mm,
animation and for filmmaking, like, filmmaking to me is a collective process. It's a team effort. And speaking about that,
100%.
I want us, we're going to talk a little bit about the score, because I think the score is really interesting. But you mentioned something that I hadn't thought of before, where you said like you had someone else design young Elliott. What was the purpose for that? Because I would have never thought that you had someone else come in just to design the young Elliott on his own.
Oh yeah, yeah. Just because you know, I wanted I mean, there's stuff that I can do, but then it's like I don't do that as my normal lane of work. Like my expertise is as an animator, even though I may be able to do some 3D modeling or I can draw to a certain degree or something. But you know, just being able to draw is a different skill than actually designing a character, you know, because even like when you're designing a character, you got to think about, you know, how this character can articulate, making sure even if you're doing like exaggerated proportions, is like, okay, can this character needs a certain range of motion, you know, if I exaggerate this arm length, I need him to be able to reach this, or like when he bends over, or like, you know, just there's other things involved that I would rather rely on someone else's expertise that actually does that for their job, you know, like that's their expertise. And so that's when, you know, I'll go to a modeler, go to a character designer, go to an environment modeler, you know, um, like there was a house, you know, the house that he comes in, that's actually my old house in Oakland. That was the last house I lived in before my dad passed. And so that was a collaboration with the CG artist Bella and Elliott that did, you know, the modeling and the look development, you know, the texturing. So um, the only thing I did jump into that was kind of I didn't hire for was the lighting and rendering, and that was like I've had some experience in it, but I was like, okay, maybe I could do it because I'm treating things a little more simple, and so I felt a little bit more confident with having it be more simple. I can handle it and not have to like, you know, be too hard on myself about it being like at a certain, you know, production quality or something. But I also took time to learn, like, you know, going through documentation and videos, trying to learn the proper way of doing it, but also doing it in the software I was using, the Unreal Engine, which is a game engine, but it's used for film as well because of the real time rendering. But but yeah, that was a long way of answering why I got a
No,
character
I
designer.
appreciate you
But
giving me that. No, I appreciate you being that detailed, because this is why I love doing what I do. I say all the time, but it's true. Because like when it comes to animating, for instance, I have never really thought of it being of there. In abstract and in theory, I know that there's different people who do different things and specialize in different things. But for instance, it never really, I don't think I ever really thought of it specifically that there is someone whose job is to design what characters look like.
yeah,
You know, whose job it is to say your eyes will look like this, your nose will look like this. You know, I think for many of us, I think for anyone who does not work in the animation film industry, we think that the lead animator, like such as yourself, is the person who designs what every single character looks like. And I think we kind of assume that kind of like that's what like mangakas who do like Japanese anime and stuff, like who write and do like they do everything themselves. You know, they're like one man show when it comes to like doing the character designs, the complete story and everything. But like what you're saying, like you're like there's people whose specialty is doing background design, someone whose specialty is figuring out the animated movement of these characters, how they move, how their musculature moves. You know, there's someone whose job is to figure out this is how young Elliott looks like versus older Elliott. You know, there's and I've never really thought of animation that way, particularly like the specifics of like people's whose job you see in the credits. You know, you see like you see like the names of the different departments and these different things in the credits, but you don't ever really actually sometimes think about what these mean specifically. So I do appreciate you explaining that to me, because now I understand there is someone who designed young Elliott, because you yourself may be like, hey, that's not really my forte. designing what humans look like. But so like I'm like, now I know something new.
But you were right about like they're like in the 2D, like in the height of the 2D days with um uh
Disney,
Disney
Bambi
and
and
then
Lion King those days.
yeah, so they
Cruella de
there was a lot of that. There was the lead animator, the lead of that character, because a lot of times the supervisor would have a certain character that they were supervising, and so they would design the characters as well. And so that used to be a thing. I think as things progressed into CG animation, and there's so many more technical aspects to bringing this thing to life. It made more sense to have those specialties because yeah, you would have the character designer, designing the character, but then you have a modeler that actually reimagines that character three-dimensionally. And then you have a character rigger that goes in and is like creates the controls so that they can be puppeteered basically.
Yeah.
And then there's me, the animator, who does the puppeteering to make sure you have a believable performance and all that. And then but even things like the skin texture, hair, groom, and then you have cloth simulation, people that do the clothing, and they sometimes have people that really do it in real life. They're
they're the costume designers of the animation world, for what the clothes and everything look like.
I mean, that's why these films cost so much, but it's
there's also, way more people working on them because they're literally, because the thing is, like, we've talked about this previously in our previous interviews. The thing and as you were saying, like, yeah, like the old school Disney movies like Bambi, 101 Dalmatians, like Aristocrats, those old 2D animations, like when we would watch, like they would always, and I wish Hollywood would go back to this, where there would always be like a special edition of the behind the scenes the making of, and we'd see the lead animators like sitting down designing these characters with doing the flip books and going in coloring, flipping, going in coloring, flipping, going in coloring. We see the characters and the stories be brought to life, whereas because so much of it now is in computer, in within the animation world of the computer, and there's all of these different people building these characters from like in layers, almost like a tin type plate. Is almost like we don't get to see that process. So like I think we kind of like become it almost abstractly. I think the closest we've seen to it recently would be with Into the Spider-Verse, which you also worked on. They did do some behind the scenes specials for Into the Spider-Verse, but even that was still kind of like that film is so visually complex. Like there's so much going into it, and like sometimes I think now so many of us, we kind of take I call film, people all say movie magic. I kind of see it is movie magic, but I also look at it as alchemy. We kind of don't get to see the process of it. And I think that's something that's missing in film and like in Hollywood. I think because we don't get these like behind the scenes specials, of like when they were doing DVDs, it was the director's special editions cuts. You would hear them come in and do like the voiceover description of the film.
Right.
And that kind of stuff. And like we don't really get that anymore. Like that to me was always part of the movie making magic, because that made movie making so fun and interesting to see worlds come to life. And I think that's what's missing now. And so like we kind of like lose the appreciation for the magic of movies. And like you kind of lose the appreciation for how difficult it is to make an art film.
That stuff I used to go to sleep to, like the I think Pixar did well with that stuff, with their films early on. Because The Incredibles, I remember The Incredibles being the first one that I really saw that was like, it went through like from design through to the score. Like it was like, it showed you all of it. and it just made me fall in love with so many different areas. And that was like when I was animating, not knowing that my appreciation for all these aspects would later contribute to me wanting to create stuff, but it doesn't happen that much. I mean, a lot of times it's like all the documentation, that takes resources, and then they're probably, everyone's thinking about money. So it's like, well, we got to put this stuff together, and then it's like
They don't
sharing of secrets, maybe. I don't know. Like there's so many other these thoughts that go into not doing it.
said, I miss when you would rent a VHS tape and you had like 20 extra minutes of behind the scenes of what was happening on set. You see like the stunts, how stunts were performed, you see, you get tours of set visits. And yeah, you mentioned The Incredibles. Yeah, Pixar did a fantastic job with that, with making the movie making magic the part of the promotions for the films, because they really did go like full on from full concept to execution to final product for The Incredibles. And they did it with Coco too, because I remember Coco was my first, when I first started doing film criticism and journalism. I went to Pixar for Coco, and that was my very first set visit. And I remember like sitting in the room and so we got a tour of Coco, but I was so fascinated. They showed us how they came up with the creatures, like I can't remember the term, but it's like
Alebrijes,
the Alebrijes, right? And that was so fascinating to me, where they discussed the rigging, the character designs and the rigging, and we don't get that anymore. We don't even get no, they don't even really do set visits anymore. They don't really do those kind of things, and I'm like,
everything's so rushed now. It's like, well, if they're not thinking about money, it's time. So then, and then they both, they're connected. But like, because the schedules have gotten shorter and shorter, and so you gotta. There's a lot of times you're crunching to the end. I think out of the 11 or 12. Or was it 11? So feature films that I've animated on, there's probably like one that I can think of that I didn't really do any overtime or like crunching on at the end. That was the Boss Baby. I think that was the only one that was it was pretty smooth throughout.
Yeah, like the whole term crunch time now is synonymous with the animation world,
Yeah, it's just to be expected.
Which is ridiculous. But we'll talk about something a little less stressful. Before we were talking about getting help, and like you were saying, asking people that you're familiar with, and one of those people that you're familiar with is Jermaine Stegall. He worked with you on Canvas for the score. And something that I really love about this score, we talked about call and response, with the dialogue. We talked about the film being black and white, and all of this just being these relevant discussions of Black culture, Black men, and Black male identity. And I think the score actually kind of plays into all of that, because there's a bit of jazz, there's a bit of classical, but even with all of these different elements, the score is very light, and it underlines the whole theme of the film being just rest and peace and calm and acceptance. It's not rushed. It's a very smooth and light and eerie score, and I really love that. It just feels very much like you were saying, like for Yvette's voice, it's like supposed to be a comfort for Elliott, and the score is like a comfort for the audience. Like the score provides that calmness. It's like the sea that we see at the end is a calm sea, and like the score is like that. So talking about working with Jermaine and figuring out how you wanted the score to sound, and sound design was Andrew Vernon, and the sound design for this film, the film is very quiet, but there's moments where like the sound of the traffic, like the sound of like the bicycle bell, like the rushing wind when Elliott is picturing himself just falling to a moment of rest. So talk to me about figuring out how you wanted this audio to sound. And I think it's important that the audio isn't very sonically jarring, because the film is black and white, so you don't want, I kind of like picture like color films that have a lot of color have a lot of sound, whereas films that are black and white or thing have like, you don't want the sound to overwhelm the visual of the film.
Yeah, I mean that goes into just my thought going into it, was just like everything had to work together. So everything had to complement and support each other. And so working with Jermaine before on Canvas, like it was like, yeah, he gets my taste with like where I'm going without a whole lot of back and forth of like trying to figure it out. Is like, he'll have a few options and one of those is going to be it, and so it doesn't take a bunch more of those. It's like, sometimes like we'll just have a talk first and talk about, the intention of, what's happening and also the emotional moments throughout and the feelings, that I want to push, even if it's not what you see, but more subtext, so it's, and I'll, sometimes I'll have a few examples of things that I've listened to, or I'll throw something temporary in there. And so, because I also, with these being, short films, I know that people are working on other stuff, so I'll try to have my ducks in a row before going to them, so that I can be clear on the things, and then I can try to eliminate as much back and forth as possible. But with Jermaine, that's never that's never an issue. Same with Andrew. Like, I feel like it helps when you have similar tastes with stuff, so it's like it eliminates some of the guesswork. And Jermaine will randomly send me something, even before we're like getting, he'll get inspired by something, and then he'll send me something that he was thinking. I was like, oh yeah, and then he'll have an idea for something, like for the peace area, when he free falls. I remember telling him, like, this is, even though he's technically plummeting, this is his first moment of peace, like from everything else. And that's why he's just like eyes closed, and he's just calm, in Yvette's voice, telling her as well, like, this is a moment where we kind of taper off of everything else that was happening. And, you hear it in her voice, Black man, you deserve peace. You deserve release. It's like all like these stretched out kind of, and so I don't have to give too much. And then because they kind of know where my tastes are from other stuff, it's kind of like, okay, maybe this one, and I'll throw in a wild card in there just in case, and then, odds are one of them will be it, and that'll be the direction we go. And, but yeah. And then when it came to the sound design, Andrew already knew from the beginning, it was like not wanting things. He's like, things probably shouldn't be too big because of, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah. And, we kind of come to, he'll do a pass on stuff, and then, we'll watch it together, and we'll both throw out ideas on, what could be here, what could be heard here, what's the sound here. Like even like back on Canvas when Andrew did the sound, even just starting on the teaser, it was like, what is the sound, like the sound of this hallway that you hear, and you hear the echo of Grandpa's wheelchair through it. Like, it's like, you want the sound of loneliness, and like there's always an emotional tie into the sound. And same thing, with Jermaine, it was like trying to simplify, not use too many instruments, but try to keep things simple, but it made an impact. And we did the same thing on Canvas, where it's like most of the time it's just like wanting one instrument, and like the teaser was only piano only, so it's like, yeah, they get me. So
And I think that's like making just things a bit easier, like working with people who understand you, who get you, just like.
mm-hmm.
And again, that's kind of what the film is about, like having people who get you and who understand you, just to like help make the process a bit easier, and just like I can lean on you, you can lean on me, and together we'll get through this. I say this and I mean this when I say this. I'm not being trite, but I mean, like, that's again, like, that's because there's something sometimes I like to ask my guests at the end of interviews is like, what has making their particular project taught them about filmmaking, about themselves. And I want to ask you that, like, what has making a film that, because Canvas was a very personal film to you, you know, like that's something again that we've discussed, where like you use a lot of your own personal experiences and your own personal outlook on life and use animation as a medium to like kind of like pick your own brain, you know, and figure out and bring what you have inside your brain out and figure out, this is how I want to work my way through. So like for you, like Canvas was our last interview was in 2021. Like, what have you learned about yourself as a filmmaker since then that came through the process of making this film, Black Man, Black Man?
That's a great question. I'd say I think it was learning to let go of expectations of the industry. I think, you know, like, it's like, no, not, you know, there's some tool stuff, you know, there's process things that I learned and all that, but I feel like the big thing that I kept with me that I'm bringing forward is just letting go of those expectations of the industry, of what animation needs to be, or what may be expected of me because of things that I've worked on before. Like, there's a whole lot of, you know, family films that I've worked on, but that, you know, that's only a piece of the things that I'm into in terms of me creating for myself. Like, you know, I mean, my next thing is a Western that I'm doing. And so, you know, it's like I have a Western, and, you know, I love like horror genre. Like, it's, you know, it's, and so for me, it's like, I'm going to make what I want, period. You know, and so, you know, people may get it, people may not, people may think, you know, oh, this should, you know, animation should have this, should do this, it should be more magical things, you know, like, and I'm like, oh, that's cool. If that's what you're looking for, like, you can find that, but like, I'm going to make what I'm making. And, you know, regardless of how it's presented, the core of it is going to be something special, because it's, no matter what, it's all going to come from something real and a place that means something to me. And I feel like I set out to do this stuff because, you know, we're all navigating this world, and, you know, I want to put these ideas and put these experiences and feelings into these that connect, you know, so people don't feel alone in this world. And even if they, you know, they pop something on TV or on the internet and they see this short film, like, I think it's a great thing when they can watch something and be like, oh, and see a connection, see someone else has gone through the same thing, or someone else is dealing with that, and this is how they're handling it. And, you know, so yeah.
And I think that's the beauty of like independent filmmaking in particular. Like, you know, you don't, because the thing that you're saying, that people have expectations of animated films, like so many people have these expectations of everything being very commercialized and a sequel to sequel, you know, like, and everything has to be like, there's this thing, and it annoys me so much, where like if and it always happens with Black people, where if a Black person becomes famous up to a particular level, you know, if they start in a film, and they become people, suddenly so many other people outside of the Black community knows these people now. They're like, oh, they should go and work on a MCU or DCEU film. I'm like that, and I had to tweet about it. I'm like, that cannot be the benchmark of success of a Black filmmaker or a Black writer or director, like in art. That cannot be the benchmark of success. You become famous and like go work on an MCU. Really? You want them to go and work? Like, shouldn't the goal be to get them to like work on independent films and bring their own personal stories to life? You know, like you, and so that's why I love independent film, because you're like, you know what? I'm not gonna wait for some big massive studio to greenlight my story and decide it's worthy of funding. You're like, I'm gonna do it myself, and I'm gonna work with people who want me to help who believe in this vision, and we're gonna bring it together. It doesn't have to be doesn't have to be a feature film. Everything does not have to be a feature film. Short films are just as valid, and that's why I love talking to short film filmmakers, because most short film filmmakers are like, you know what, I'm gonna get this done by hook or by crook, god damn it, and they do it, and that's what you did, you're like, I'm gonna do it, and you did it. And not like you mentioned the Western, the Turners, that you already have a teaser for it on your YouTube channel. So we're gonna wrap up here with this, but talk to me about going from the canvas being such a soulful story about a little girl and her grandfather and the process of painting and art, to Black Man being this introspective examination of Blackness and Black identity and Black male angst and emotional, what's the word I'm looking for? Emotional discovery and acceptance, to now going a Western with a mom, pa on the American frontier. And reminding people, yes, Black men and Black people were cowboys before white people.
Yeah.
They were like the original cowboys, vaqueros were like Mexican called vaqueros from thing, and then you have Black men were cowboys too. So like, talk to me about going through all it. And the thing is, with each film is very visually different too. Like what we see in the teaser for the Turners is very, very visually different to what we see with Black Man. So so let's talk about you turning a page now with the Turners. See, I'm trying to be a little.
Yeah, see that. That's good. That's good. No, I mean, it just goes back to what I was saying about like having different interests, and that's I always wanted to do something that was in that genre, in the Western genre, and so. With this, it's again, even though it will be this this short film adventure, and of course, like in typical Westerns, you have the action, you have that kind of stuff, you got the underlying story that brings about the action, but it's still my stamp in that. So at the core of it, underneath, the foundation of it, is really a love story. It's these two that you see, they have a mission that they have to go on themselves. I mean, you see in the teaser, they have blood on them and stuff. But he's trying to rekindle this love that they've lost over the years, and so that's something that's going to be present throughout their journey, because I think especially when in this case with them, they're they're in their early 70s, and so this is a life that they left behind long time ago, 30 years ago. You have this team of outlaws, and things have happened that I'll reveal later, but things have happened that has created some distance between them, but there's also something that brought them back together, and so they got to put their personal stuff aside to work together, but it's like, this feels good, and I want my love back, and so we'll be on that journey with them along the way. But I don't like animation limiting itself, and I don't want to be limited by the expectations of the medium. And so I'm just going to keep finding ways to make what I want to make, whether it's a short film, a feature, or whether it's a game, whatever it is. Like, I'll find a way to do what I'm trying to do within that sandbox.
And I'm looking forward to the Turners, because when I saw the trailer, I'm like, "Ooh, it's giving a little bit Tombstone." Like I like those old school actually, like the good, the bad, and the ugly, like the classics. But thank you so much for talking with me, Frank. Like, we have never actually met in person. I was just thinking about I think we first started thing 2018,
18, yeah.
But I'm so excited to see. I was so happy to see Black Man And I'm excited to see what you do with the Turners and whatever else you work on. Thank you so much for talking with me, and congratulations to the cast and the crew and everyone who worked on the film. Yay.
Thank you. No, I appreciate it. And yeah, we gotta find a way.
Right. Right. It's been a long year. It's been a lot of years. But look how far we've come. Like, you know.
Yeah, no.
I'm proud of us.
Seriously.